Executive Outlook. Today, we are excited to have Ariana, the Chief Operating Officer at Provio Automation. Ariana is helping businesses and government agencies transform by using AI and automation to make their operations smarter and more efficient. Welcome, Ariana, to the Executive Outlook.
Isha, thank you for having me.
We are here at a point where automation, AI is leading in the market. So, how did your journey begin into AI automation, because you have decades of experience?
Yeah, definitely. So actually my journey to in technology is very unconventional. I actually started in the legal field for over a decade. I honestly thought, I was going to be an immigration attorney. That was my dream, was to, help and support the immigration community here in the United States. But when I moved to the Washington, D.C. area, a little over 10 years ago, I really found myself in the midst of this government technology world. And, I wasn't really sure how I fit into that. So I really had to pivot, and I landed my first, government contracting a job at USCIS, which is the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services Office. And so somehow, I was still serving the immigration community, just in a different capacity now in the technology sector. So I kind of worked my way up. I started as a business analyst and then went into a project management, then, was offered a federal position as a government employee and worked my way up as a branch chief. And then went back to government contracting, which is where I'm at today as the COO for Purveo Automation. And we're a small government contracting company. So yeah, quite the journey.
Great, that's exciting to hear. So, leading the large transformation projects, how do you identify that where technology, whether it's automation, AI, or business strategy, can actually create the real business value?
Yeah, so when we lead transformation projects, we're really generally trying to start to understand what the mission and the pain points of our customers are before actually bringing in any type of technology. So we really want to understand, are they trying to decommission a legacy system, or are they trying to modernize an existing system, or do they need to bring in a whole new solution? So through our discovery sessions with our stakeholders that we start initially, we want to drive through, the data-driven analysis, and then we can really identify, where automation or AI or integrations or any type of data strategy can help eliminate those efficiencies or improve their decision making or enhance, overall the customer's user experience. The key for us is really we want to align every technology investment to a measurable business outcome, not just for technology's sake, but we really want to identify the impact that will help move, the organization forward, whether it be in cost efficiency or time efficiencies and things like that.
So, do you want to share some example which you have discovered during your discovery sessions, which you thought or the business thought that okay, everything is going as expected, but you have find out major things which actually impacted and created the business value?
Yeah. So when really just analyzing, I think a lot of the times, a lot of the examples that we do see are inefficiencies in like the number of tasks that they're doing, the number of tools that they're utilizing. There's a lot of, manual processes that people tend to kind of revert back to their old ways, saving things to desktops or, using multiple Word documents. And so there's not a lot of clarity and visibility into, what others are actually working on. And so actually the biggest example that's occurring right now is because of, the current administration, a lot of federal employees have now left federal service. And so the knowledge gap is completely lost. And a lot of them were working in very, old systems or old ways. And so trying to figure out, what the workflows were, where documents live, what are the processes have been a big challenge in trying to determine where they're actually going to be working from. So part of our job as, contractors is kind of going in there and figuring out the process of how things are working, how to make things more efficient. Eliminating all of those manual processes and figuring out, are there systems that we can integrate or processes that we can automate as we go through really just understanding the current state analysis of where things are so that we can really help influence that future state.
And that is actually the real value of the businesses as well. You're doing manually, now it is automated, and the whole cycle of manual work reduces and efforts are saved. So could you walk us through your decision making process? Like you mentioned about, you start by discovering, right? So how do you implement from ideation to the implementation when you're launching any transformative initiative?
Yeah, so our decision making process is definitely not linear or singular. We really, engage our stakeholders from the very beginning. It's overall very collaborative and continuous effort and partnership with our customers. So we utilize a variety of different agile methodologies and frameworks throughout our process. And we begin with that discovery process, as I mentioned before. But the outcome of those sessions are really the results of this transformation roadmap that we're going to utilize. And from that, we have this prioritized use case backlog. So we're really defining, what's most important to the customer, what is the most value that they will obtain from prioritizing this first use case. So we really want to ensure that we're delivering the most impact opportunity first. So by utilizing these artifacts, we're able to determine, what's important to the customer and what that initial focus will be. So once we've determined that, then we go into ideation. We really are working at this point. Our design team is fully integrated in with our end users. We're conducting, those user interviews. We're rapidly prototyping and continuously ideating and testing designs with them. We're iterating on that from the feedback, really just trying to understand, the user experience really at the core of what they do and how they're doing it. And then along with that iterative design process, we're also iteratively developing in 2 week sprints or even faster depending on the project. Generally, it's a 2 week. So there are some customers that like to go a little faster, but this really just allows us to course correct quickly and deliver value incrementally rather than waiting at months down the line or a year down the line for a big reveal. The result of this is more collaborative and transparent process that really builds trust with our stakeholders and accelerates adoption because we're delivering so quickly.
And how to make any stakeholder satisfied with the outcomes?
I think the key to that is really engaging them from the beginning. Oftentimes I think there's other projects that I've seen where they want to keep it at upper level management and they really don't empower, their staff to really participate in the process. But for us, we really want to talk to those people doing the work. We want to, talk to those that are boots on the ground, that are doing the processes, because ultimately they're the ones that are going to be using our products, right? So we want to ensure that we're developing and designing for them from the very beginning. So we really encourage, the leadership to let us have access to their staff from the very beginning. So that way we're designing for them. They're actually testing our, design mock-ups and prototypes, and they're telling us like, no, this doesn't make sense, or this needs to move here, or and that really helps influence our design process. So ultimately, when we're really developing something that they've already tested and validated and understand. And so in that manner, it's more accelerates user adoption in the end.
Thanks for sharing that. So, what frameworks or principles do you use to make sure that you're aligned with the business outcomes?
Yeah, so as I mentioned a little earlier, we do use a variety of agile methodologies and frameworks, but we really want to anchor our projects to three core principles: one being alignment, two being transparency, and three being adaptable. So alignment for us in our project really means we're really directly mapping those measurable business outcomes that I mentioned earlier, not just technical milestones, but we really want those business outcomes that have been determined to have that business value in alignment with our customers. And then the transparency comes through our governance frameworks and agile ceremonies that keep the leadership and delivery teams connected. We're often working with our customers directly, really as a one team mindset. They're fully integrated into our team as well. There are projects that we have where they're pair programming, there's like a federal staff member or a contracting staff. And other projects are a little bit different, but we really are integrated fully with our customer teams as well. And then lastly is adaptability. We really ensure that we can pivot when the business needs evolve. Again, given the current circumstance of the administration, things are changing on a daily basis. So we have to be very flexible and move and change priorities as quickly as they're coming. So we often leverage, various different frameworks like Kanban and Scrum, extreme programming, pair programming, UI UX principles, a variety of different things to really maintain our focus and accountability across all aspects of the software development process. So the reason we use so many different frameworks and methods is because it really allows us to be flexible and adaptable to utilizing, the best pieces of each. And so we have found a lot of success in our projects by utilizing those frameworks.
So once you have implemented the project, so what metrics or indicators do you use to measure the success of your efforts?
Yeah, so at the start of every project, during our discovery sessions, we always really want to start by benchmarking our current state analysis. So, as I mentioned, we're kind of looking at how much time is it taking them to do a specific task or workflow? What tools and how many tools are they using? What are the costs that are associated to that? Not just for the tools themselves, but how much is it costing, a certain level staff member to do this process? And so once we've established all of those baselines, then we're able to really compare that and track the improvements against those same indicators through our future state analysis, post development and post deployment. But beyond efficiency and cost savings, we're really closely looking at the adoption and engagement of people using the applications in our platforms. Because if they don't trust the process, then it's not going to drive better collaboration or adoption. Long term impact really comes from sustained usage and continuous improvement. So even post deployment, we're constantly asking them for feedback to test things. They're letting us know if there's bugs. We're remediating those things as quickly as possible. So those are also metrics that we're tracking as well. How many issues are we actually deploying into the environments? And then how fast are we remediating those? But the transformation isn't successful if only the technology works. But an indicator of success for us really is if the people are embracing it, which is why we include them from the very start, in the design process, so that ultimately there is a higher percentage of user adoption and embracing the applications.
So there are some instances also where the project does not go as expected as we planned. So can you share any instance which happened and your learnings from it?
Yes, most definitely. I think over the past decade, I think from my personal experience, I've learned that change management is the hardest part of any project. Nobody likes change, right? Everybody's comfortable in their ways. They don't like new systems. They don't like new processes more so than technology itself. So once we've delivered a great product, but leadership wasn't fully engaged from the very start, they kind of gave us direction, and they told us what they wanted, but we tried to get them involved from the very beginning, but they were just, too busy and didn't make time to work with us. So without their buy-in from the very beginning, staff started reverting back to their old habits and old tools and old processes, and then really didn't embrace the new system. So that experience really reinforced for us that transformation really must start with the right mindset and from the leadership top down to their staff. So once leaders were aligned and championed that new platform, then adoption followed on this project specifically. Naturally the transformation really took hold once, they empowered and said, yep, this is the way we're going to go. This is the tool we're going to use. We're no longer, and then at that point, you really have to kind of like almost decommission some of the old stuff so that they're not able to utilize it and can really fully adopt that. But that, I think the change management piece is definitely the most challenging on any project. And so having, the alignment of leadership and buy-in from them and then trickling that down to their staff is really the most important part of a successful project, I think.
Thank you for sharing that. So suppose you are looking to advise the CDOs or startup founders, right? So what, like, they have a problem but they are not aware of the problem, right? So how you will gonna help them identify the problem and share the perspective that, hey, this is important for the business, and how will you gonna lead the transformative journey for them as a flow, how that will gonna go? Can you help with that?
Yeah, so I think from a leadership perspective, they're probably really looking at, what's costing them too much in regards to like time or money wise cost efficiencies. And so those are probably the main things that they will target first to, help create efficiencies or alignment. So with knowing, that use case, if they bring that to us, then we would want to engage directly with the team that's currently, working on that. So going through our process, our delivery model process that I, kind of highlighted in a few of the answers prior is, trying to understand what is their current state of what they're doing, what the tools that they're utilizing, and then also really trying to identify where those blocks are happening, what's taking them the longest, why is it taking them long, or why is it costing so much. And then we would provide, through the discovery process, we would then provide the results back to the leadership prior to, deciding on like what we're going to do. We would give them our recommendations as the technologists and the experts. We'd give them, hey, these are the results of our discovery process. This is what we recommend to help make efficiencies. And so at this point, this is the change management piece where we really want to get the buy-in from leadership, have them understand, the pros and cons and why we're recommending a certain direction. And so at that point, we're obtaining, the buy-in and the approval from leadership to be able to move forward. And then at that point, that's when we would start really quickly ideating and rapidly prototyping the solution for this piece, and then engaging the staff members that are actually doing this process. So ultimately, post delivery, it's successful and they're adopting it, and it's giving them cost efficiencies or time efficiencies or whatever metrics that are aligned to the business value that we had identified at the initial point.
That sounds really good. And with the clear, desired outcome in their mind, the leadership's mind, then it will be followed.
Yes, exactly.
The project can be the success, right? Okay.
Mhm.
That's good. So if you want to advise the CDO, this is another question. So where you want them to invest in the future, you can take for next 2 years, 3 years.
hmm Yeah, I would really advise them to invest in powering their teams, not just with tools, but with AI, fluency and data confidence, because technology, as we know, is evolving at a rapidly human pace. And so adaptability, I think the human adaptability is going to be the real differentiator. So I think leaders should really focus on cultivating digital curiosity, data driven decision making, and really just cross functional collaboration overall. Organizations that will thrive, I think, won't just use AI, but they're going to build cultures that really understand and shape it. So we at Purveo, we really encourage all of our staff to be empowered by utilizing AI in their everyday jobs. No matter what their role is, it's not just for developers anymore. I myself as a COO have many AI bots, I have agents, I have GPTs that really help me throughout the day, several times a day. And so we've really have invested in training our staff in doing, lunch and learns where people are often doing side projects, or they're using these new tools and supporting our customers. And so we provide these lunch and learn opportunities for our staff to kind of share, what is it that they're doing. Maybe it's a new tool that we're not aware of, and so it would benefit us as a company, but also their personal growth as well. I'm a big proponent and believer that there's always something to learn. And you learn something every day. And so I think it's just staying, it really just empowering their team. And so for us and our mindset at Prevail is really, those are the type of people that we're really looking for, the people that are innovators, that are wanting to learn and aren't just stuck in the old ways, or stuck on one favorite tool, because there's so many to explore. And so I would really just encourage, CDOs or any type of leadership to just really, empower their teams and invest in their learning.
That's amazing, because ultimately it's a teamwork that makes successful businesses. All right.
100%. Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing your incredible insights, and your journey is so inspiring. Thank you so much. It's pleasure to have you here on the Executive Hour.
Thank you, Isha. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much.